Hey fellow movers and shakers, Emily here at the Movement Clinic, and today's class is a myofascial release class focused on creating happy hips. So grab 2 blocks or something that you can sit on, a couple of big books, also a couple of myofascial release balls, tennis balls, whatever you can find that might work. Find a place to move and I'll see you there. So we will actually start in a seat today. And we're going to take our blocks side by side lengthwise on the lowest, widest setting. Essentially, we're just giving a nice wide berth for our butts to sit on. And we're going to take either of the balls, or each of the balls rather, and we're going to place them in between our bony sit bone and our tailbone. And actually, we'll just do 1 ball at a time. I lied. We won't do 2 because that's a little bit too much. So I'm going to start on my left side. And go ahead and bend your knees, kind of support yourself however you need with your feet. Again, myofascial release, a big part of myofascial release is kind of playing with the positioning of your body so that it works for you. So continue to do that and make sure that we are not putting these myofascial release tools on bone, because that also is not the point and it does not feel good. So if you take your hand and you find that bony sit point and just start to walk a finger width at a time in until you hit some softer tissue in towards the tailbone, that's where you're going to want to place the ball and sit on it. And as you start to lean over to the left, ooh, I found my spot. These are getting our deep external rotators for our hip joint. And this left leg can stay close to reduce the weight on the ball. Or as you start to walk it away, you start to feel a little bit more weight with gravity because you're not putting so much weight on the foot to kind of lift off of it. So however much weight feels good, make sure that you're not holding any unnecessary tension or effort in any other part of your body. So maybe just allow the arms to drape down by your sides, yawn the jaw open and closed, really tune into the body to make sure that you're not gripping or clenching to try to lift up and out of this and any intensity that it's creating. All you're going to do is start to allow that left leg to roll open, so externally rotate and bring it back in. Whew. And externally rotate, bring it back in. Externally rotate, bring it back in. And between these 2 positions, find the one that feels like you can soften and relax into it. Open means that you're more or less engaging or shortening those muscles here. Closed means that they're lengthened, and either way, however you feel that you can actually feel the most kind of release, find that position and take 2 or 3 deep breaths. Often the hardest thing about myofascial release is finding those places where you can actually soften around the resistance and soften within any intensity that's occurring. And good news being that we only need about 30 to 60 seconds of this to be effective. So we're there now. Go ahead and lean to the right, slowly grab the ball, move it out from underneath you. Keep hold of it though, so it doesn't roll away from you. And just allow both legs to stretch out in front of you. Release in any way that feels good. Maybe notice if those left toes are rolling out, or maybe if you're sitting crisscross applesauce, if that left knee is draping open easier. And get ready to prepare for the other side. So place the left leg wherever you can to support. Right leg out in front. take your right hand, find that bony sit point, walk it in towards the tailbone, find where you're going to place the ball, and then go ahead and place it there. It's a bit like of an awkward positioning. And again, it's a small gap, typically, anatomically, right, between the tailbone and that sit bone. So finding the spot that's right for you, finding the weight that's right for you by keeping that right foot close to you, or maybe starting to wiggle it away from you a little bit, allowing the right knee to open and close, arms straight down by your sides. Maybe yawn the jaw open and closed again, soften your eyebrows. Opening and closing the leg, or internally and externally rotating that thigh bone and the hip socket. Again, finding a position that you can be still in for a few breaths. Notice if you're lifting your shoulders up in an effort to lift weight off of that intensity and resistance of your myofascial release tools, and just soften what you can over and over. Oh gosh, that feels so good. All right, go ahead and lean over to the left, grab the ball, move it off to the side briefly with your other myofascial release ball, and sit briefly and notice any changes in that right leg, maybe if it just feels like it's released, or that, what I like to call the pancake effect, where it feels like the tissues are just kind of pancaking and spreading like pancake batter across your mat. And go ahead and take one of the blocks and place it at the top of the mat. We'll use it as a pillow. As we move the other block off to the side, we won't need it. Grab both of your myofascial release balls and lie on your backs. And now we're simply going to find some different external rotators, the piriformis this time. And so still thinking about staying basically in that same line, but moving closer to the low back side to side. So we'll be outside of the bony part of the sacrum, this kind of flat bone right above the tailbone. And going right off of that is where we're gonna place the balls side to side. So if you wanna take a right hand and feel where that bony part is and walk your fingers out towards the outer hip until you hit probably some pretty dense muscle tissue, that's where we're going, side to side. Find the place for both balls to land. Close your eyes and really kind of live in the experience of where things are so you can feel, do I need to adjust? Do I need to move and wiggle and find a place where I can soften around this resistance, where I can sit gently in the intensity? Bring the soles of your feet to touch and allow both knees to open out and close and open and close. Again, finding that external into internal rotation of the thighs. And then ultimately see if you can allow both knees to open out in this sort of supine butterfly position. See if you can soften or relax anything. I needed to bring my shoulder blades underneath my back. Smooth out the breath. And if you feel like you need more here, without rolling off of the ball on either side, you're simply going to start to lift the left knee to point up towards the ceiling again, and you'll feel the weight get a little bit harder, or more firm rather, in that right glute. And then same thing, allow the left knee to open back out as you gently lift the right knee up to experience a little bit more pressure and weight on the left glute. And then you can keep kind of rocking side to side, or you can stay still with both knees lying open if that's better for you. Check in with breath. Check in with eyebrows, jaw, neck, shoulders. Soften, soften. Good. And slowly lift your knees back up towards center. Toe heel your feet apart. Plant the soles of the feet. Press down to lift the hips off of the balls. Grab them in either hand and allow your bum and your hips to find the mat again. Toe heel the feet wide. Knees soften in on one another. And then very slowly lengthen both legs long, just so that you can check in with how this sort of shavasana feels at this moment. And feel how the right and left hip feel, maybe either side of the low back. Maybe even noticing where the sides of these hips are in space. Where the toes are pointing without really needing to look, just how does it feel in your body? I always feel like my right toes pointing and rolling open more and my left toes pointing up. Maybe it's different or the same for you. Maybe both of your toes just roll and kind of roll flat out. That can be a really common pattern as well. Now you're going to take one ball and set it off to the side. And keep this one ball handy. You can always get rid of or keep this block or whatever you're using as a pillow underneath your head. Don't feel like you ever have to keep anything that isn't really working for you. And you're going to take your middle finger and your thumb, and middle finger is going to find this bony outer hip point, right, that we kind of associate with the hip, but it's really the head of our thigh bone. It's the top of the femur. And then you're going to take your thumb and you're going to find that top ridge of your pelvis. This sort of iliac crest right here is what it's called. Really what we associate is this outer kind of hip bone. And walk your fingers in towards one another until you come into some pretty dense muscle tissue. That's our gluteus medius, and that's what we're going to release next. So go ahead and take that ball, press it there, lengthen right leg long, bend left knee, and start to roll over onto that right hip. And where this left knee is facing and positioned, just like we did on the back, either helps us to roll over that right hip to create more pressure, more weight, or we can roll off of it and create less pressure, less weight. So pick what works for you. Also, the more you stack your shoulders, just as much as the more you start to move to stack your hips, will create some sort of a pressure that works for you. And you might even rock back and forth. Just little few centimeters, couple inch rocks, backwards and forwards or side to side. Whatever way feels good for you. And again, checking in with breath. Maybe finding a bit of stillness. And go ahead and roll off of the ball. We're gonna stay on the right side. So keep hold of that one ball. Right leg is gonna stay long, left leg will stay bent. But now I want you to find that frontal bony hip point and walk your fingers down 2 finger lengths or widths rather, and then or fingertips, and then walk them out slightly and press down, sort of where like your pocket would be. And we might associate this as a hip flexor. It is to a degree, the tensor fascia lata, and it is what we call the pocket muscle. And it's small, it's usually pretty tender, it's usually pretty tense, because it does a lot or a little bit of a lot of things. So we're gonna release that. Go ahead and place your ball on your pocket muscle. And what we're gonna do is start to roll over that right hip. The left knee and shin are going to land as we roll over so that our chest and belly start to face down. That right arm might come out to the right so that you sort of have like this half frog position with the left knee in line with the left hip. And again, as much or as little intensity as works. So if this is too much weight for you, you simply might prop yourself up on your forearms so that you lift the weight of your torso off of that ball. Or you might see if you can just soften fully. Again, wiggling and finding a place where you can take a few solid deep breaths. Excellent. Now, slowly make your way out. So you might lift yourself up onto your forearms, grab the ball out from underneath you, and then roll onto your back. And find that Shavasana position, both legs long. And now notice that right outer hip. I laugh every time because it really does feel like the tissues are just pancake battering across that mat. It's just spreading in all directions. Ugh, and it feels so good. And now we're gonna do the same thing on the left side. So I'm gonna switch the direction that my head is pointing simply so you aren't forced to stare at my butt. You're welcome. It's my morning gift to you. It's morning for me, but whenever you're practicing. Right knee is going to be bent. Left leg is ultimately going to go long, but take that thumb and middle finger, find the top of that bony hip crest, find the head of the femur, this outer bony point here, and then walk those fingers in towards one another until you find that gluteus medius, usually some pretty tender and very dense muscular tissue. Place your ball there. Left leg goes long and start to roll over that left hip, stacking shoulders as much or as little as you would like. Use that right leg to either start to roll over to the left to stack hips. This is my very, very tender side. So this is about as far as I can go here. And then find a position where you can soften, relax, let go. Excellent, that ought to do it. Slowly roll onto your back briefly. Take the ball in the right hand so that those left fingertips, the forefinger and the middle finger or pointer finger and middle finger can find that frontal bony hip point. Walk it down towards the thigh and then out towards the hip until you can press in and find that sort of pocket muscle here. Take your ball, place it there. And then again, this is where we're gonna start to roll all the way over towards our bellies. So however it is that you wanna do that, maybe placing the forearms down, sliding that right knee and shin on over to the left side of the mat. Ooh. Again, this is my tender side, so I'm actually starting up on my forearms. You might be able to rest the weight of your torso down as well, but not my reality. Smooth out the breath. Make sure the jaw is soft, eyebrows, shoulders. It's about 30 seconds, right? Right, team, right, gang? Go ahead and remove that ball out from underneath you. Roll onto your back for a brief couple of breaths. Allow both legs to go long and just enjoy whatever sensations across that left hip. Notice where those toes are pointing in space again. Do they feel maybe a little more symmetrical? Maybe it's just the general sensation of release in your tissues, or a general sense of relief that you're not laying on that ball anymore. Okay. Now, we're going to make our way to our bellies with both balls and no block. So move the blocks out of your way. You're going to take both balls, and ultimately, you're going to place them right under both of the front bony hip points. So if you need to sit back on your shins and kind of locate those bony hip points and walk those fingers down, you'll usually find, again, some pretty dense tissue here. That's where we're headed. So lie onto your bellies. And usually how this goes is that you'll have to press into your knees, hike your hips up, find those bony hip points, place the balls underneath. And usually just resting. Ooh, I'm gonna lift myself up a little bit so you can still hear me. Resting the weight of the pelvis there can be enough. You might bend your knees and start to windshield wiper your legs side to side in this effort to kind of find a cross fiber release, but also place a little bit more weight side to side. Ooh. And again, these are some pretty tender spots. You might even play with moving your tools in or out slightly to see if you can't find a different spot. And then again, windshield wiper the legs side to side. Breathe. Oh, yeah. And as you're ready, go ahead and release those balls out from underneath you. Move them off to the side. And press yourself back into a brief child's pose. Big toes touch, knees as close or as wide as you would like. And walk your hands back to sit on up. And there it is, myofascial release for happy hips. I would encourage and invite you to use this class before or after any sort of movement as a way to sort of prep or wind down. It can do either thing as a way to soften the tissues before we start to bring a bunch of blood flow through movement, or as a form of self-massage after you've done maybe a really strong Warrior II flow. Either way, I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you next time at the Movement Clinic. Ciao for now, party people.